Hey, my name's Llama, and today I'm bringing you the second class guide in the Surviving Hardcore series. Today I'm looking at my first class to achieve 60, the Rogue. Last video was quite long and very rambly, and I'm looking to address that for you in this one, so let's dive straight into it with race selection. Now, race selection is quite easy for a Rogue. Once again, my picks are going to be Human for the Alliance and Undead for Horde. Human gets the Sword racial skill and even a Mace racial skill if you want to go that way, providing a nice boost to damage output. While I don't tend to prioritise offense for leveling racial preference, it's optimal for endgame, and it's honestly the most helpful in terms of survivability for an alliance racial in my opinion, due to the fact that mobs will be dying quicker, so you have less opportunity to die. On Horde, we're going to be going with the Undead for a plethora of reasons. Firstly, it's going to be Will of the Forsaken. It's going to be a nice CC break for you, which is going to be huge for you while you're leveling, both in and out of dungeons, allowing you to escape a bad situation or even aid a teammate if that is something that's going to be helpful to you. Secondly is going to be Cannibalize, which is when you don't have a mana bar, you are going to be able to fully sustain yourself by regenerating the health that you are going to be getting from Cannibalize on a rogue, which is going to be really helpful because of the fact that while it is a 2-minute cooldown, you aren't going to find yourself needing to use it all that often due to the fact that you're not going to be taking that much damage, so it's going to pretty much make food redundant for you, save for food buffs. It also doubles up as an ability to regenerate health in combat. Should you need it, you would be able to gouge a mob, and if your bandage isn't available, you would be able to cannibalize a nearby corpse if you have one, for that extra survivability. And finally, the Undead start with Sword skill already trained, saving you 10 silver at a very low level, which, while not game breaking, is certainly a very nice quality of life feature to have as well. I'm going to talk about talents, and for the Rogue, this can actually be quite an interesting one because essentially there are so many great talents, it's kind of hard to pick everything up that you are going to want. So let's start with the talent build that I actually used while I was leveling up. So the first thing that we picked up is Improved Sinister Strike and Improved Gouge. Gouge is probably going to be your most used ability, well, if not, it's Sinister Strike, so picking up the improvements of both of these is practically mandatory, not least of which Gouge allows you to get at least 1 if not 2 extra ticks on your bandage from first aid when you are gouge bandaging, which is absolutely vital. Next up, you are going to have Precision and Deflection. And these are both going to be absolutely amazing talents that you're going to want 5 points in. Personally, I prioritise Deflection just because it unlocks Riposte, which is going to be your best ability the entire time that you are leveling. Once I've got Deflection and Riposte, I actually move over into Endurance to get my increased cooldown for Sprint and Evasion, before moving back up into Precision, putting the extra points in there to unlock Dual Wield Specialisation. By the time I finish both of these, we can move back down, get Blade Flurry at level 30, pick up some Sword Specialisation points, down into Weapon Expertise when it unlocks, back to Sword Specialisation, and get to Adrenaline Rush. This is a fairly generic combat build, but there are actually other talents in here that you may wish to consider. Personally, I don't think Improved Kick is worth it for the 2 points. Kick is a nice ability, and this is going to actually be really nice to have, but it's not worth the 2 points when there are too many other good talents to be taking. Improved Sprint, however, is worth considering. It's not an amazing ability, it does cost 2 points, but if it is going to save your life, it is definitely worth considering. Personally, I don't really like Aggression. It's actually a really good talent for damage output, but it's not going to be essential, and 3 points is a large investment. Mace and Fist Weapon Specialisation, of course, are going to be your preference over Sword Specialisation if that's the weapons that you have access to. But personally, I would say Sword Specialisation is almost always going to be the best option, not least of which because swords are the most available weapon type in my opinion. After that, I moved over into Assassination, where I picked up the 5 points in Malice for the increased crit chance, literally everything in the second row, Slice and Dice being my top priority here, but the other talents being absolutely lovely as well. Doing this allows us to get down to Relentless Strikes, which is a fantastic talent and one that you're going to want in basically any rogue build, before coming over into Lethality, which is where I finished off my talent points upon reaching 60. Now, one thing that I would want to say is that while this is what 99% of rogues are going to look like for their talents while leveling, or at least something very akin to this, there are other talents that I didn't pick that you could pick, so things such as Remorseless Attacks or Improved Exposed Armor. A lot of people like to go for an extremely defensive build, so they would have been picking up Lightning Reflexes, something which I do wish that I could find the 5 points to be able to pick up. I just didn't have it as an opportunity. And there are people who like to go into the subtlety tree as well, going down for the improved ambush. I think any of you are watching Guzu leveling at the minute. I believe this is currently what he's doing. And there is even some people who like to level essentially across all three trees. I've not actually had the opportunity to experiment with it myself, but it is very interesting and something that you could consider. And if you are curious, the way it works is that you essentially go down to get your ghostly strike in the subtlety tree, picking up all the defensively viable things along the way, so things such as like elusiveness for the vanish and blind to reduce cooldown, as well as reducing your chance to be detected in stealth and increase speed in stealth, things like that. You then come over into combat, you pick up lightning reflexes, deflection, and riposte. And then you move over into the assassination tree, picking up remorseless attacks so that you can actually have a little bit of offense and be able to kill things. It's a curious build to say the least, but I do at least like the part where you are in combat picking up both Ghostly Strike and Riposte. If you pick up the lightning reflexes and deflection, you will get 10% avoidance simply from that. Then the reduced stealth impairments that you'll be able to get from the subtlety tree, and the increased dodge chance from Ghostly Strike, and the fact that you can disarm with Riposte means that nothing's basically ever going to hit you. I don't know about its viability in terms of offense. It does seem very one-trick pony, but it is there as an option if you would like to consider it. Now let's talk about professions, and when it comes to professions, if you're looking for survivability, which is generally what I recommend, I would say that engineering is going to be the best way to go. Target dummies are great for everybody, but they have additional value when you possess a sprint to be able to get away during the time that it is active, as well as explosives being able to give you a very nice way of pulling multiple packs at the same time so that you can split pull them. If you are someone who prefers a less active form of profession, then alchemy is also an excellent option, allowing you to generate these potions that provide you stat buffs out of combat, as well as being able to give you a practically unlimited source of healing potions, so that if you do need them, you do have them available to you. Finally, if you're looking to make friends at level 60, you could consider getting leatherworking. While leveling the amount of armour that you're actually going to be able to craft that is actually going to be better than what you're going to be able to get from quest rewards or dungeons is going to be extremely minimal. However, it does allow you to fill gaps quite easily if you just get unfortunate and you find yourself with a piece of gear that's like 20 levels out of date. As well as this, when you get yourself to level 60, the amount of people begging you for your Cured Rugged Hide 3-day cooldown is going to be absolutely immense. Lastly, on the professions front, you are going to want to level all 3 secondary professions. First aid is going to be absolutely essential. You want to get this as early as possible because you're going to find yourself burning through absolutely hundreds, if not thousands of bandages on your way up. You are probably going to be using these when you are gouging a mob to be able to regenerate health in between, but it's also pretty nice if you're doing something a little bit easier to use it between mobs, just as a faster way than eating food to regenerate your health and get back onto the next mob. But either way, you are going to find yourself getting through these rather rapidly. Cooking and fishing are less mandatory, but cooking does provide a nice stat bonus to you across from the well-fed bonus, and fishing is going to prove to be a nice way of leveling your cooking, as well as being able to get you the materials that you require in order to be able to cook the food buff in question. If you are picking up engineering as a primary profession, then it is even more essential that you level fishing, as it's going to be your only viable farming method for getting the leathers to be able to craft goggles. Next up, we're going to talk about macros, and on screen right now I'll be showing you some of the macros I used on my way up to level 60. However, they basically boil down to 3 categories, so if you understand these, then you'll be able to make macros for yourself that fit the needs that you are going to have as a rogue. First up, we're going to have start attack macros. So these are basically just a macro to use an ability that has the start attack line in them, so that your ability will also start your white swings for you, enabling to optimize your damage. Next up, you're going to have mouse over CC macros, most notably for blind. This is going to allow you to CC mobs in a manner that prevents you from having to change target. This means that you won't lose your combo points on your primary target when you are CCing a secondary mob. Very helpful. And lastly, we're going to talk about pickpocket macros, which is essentially just to put the pickpocket ability, which is off the global cooldown, into one of your other abilities, usually your opener, so that every mob that you kill, you are pickpocketing it first instantly and enabling you to get an additional amount of income from those mobs, as well as, of course, those rogue-specific boxes, providing you with a little bit of a cash boost. Next up, we're going to talk about weak auras, and the only weak auras that I feel are truly essential while leveling are poison application reminders that you'll have seen at the top of my screen for your weapons, and some form of alert to let you know when riposte is usable. Other auras are nice, but they're far less important in my opinion, save possibly a centralized heads-up display if that's your preference, like you see me having above my party bars here. Beyond that, however, anything else is just going to be general weak auras as opposed to rogue-specific ones, such as a health reminder for when you are low health so you know to pot and things like that are going to be helpful regardless of the class that you are on. Now finally, we've come to my closing thoughts / personal things that I think that Rogue is going to both excel at and be weaknesses, but in truth, when it comes to Rogue, I don't think there are a great many weaknesses. I think it is single-handedly the strongest class to attempt the hardcore challenge with, and if you're looking for a starting point for taking on this challenge because you really worry about dying repeatedly at level 10, then the Rogue is probably the way to go. It has unbelievable offense cooldowns in regards to its Adrenaline Rush and Blade Flurry that will make you feel like a god, as well as so many defensive cooldowns that I'm not even going to bother listing all of them because honestly there are tens of them and you can use them in such a way that you have hundreds of options on how you can use them to keep yourself alive. The Rogue is absolutely top tier for taking on this challenge. If you do want some tips on how to play your Rogue, what I would say is that when you are doing this challenge, do not prioritize damage over control. I actually leveled the entire way using a CC related poison on my offhand rather than double instant poison because I found that slowing the mobs or being able to reduce their cast time depending on what I was fighting was infinitely more helpful. And then beyond that, imagine that your rogue is actually playing like it's PvP and spend the majority of your time not trying to kill people but just CC them to death and make them wish that they weren't playing. Of course, these are NPCs, so they won't have that mentality, but nevertheless, that is the best way to play the rogue, is to ensure your survival and your capacity to move on. But with that being said, I do believe that that's going to be the end of the video, guys. So if you do like this video, then that would be extremely helpful to me. Do click that little button down below so that I can know that. If you have any questions, then feel free to ask me in the comments below. But for now, guys, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Laters.